Okay, well, Ancestry's Thrulines was such a popular subject and spawned so many questions that I gathered all those questions together and I went straight to Ancestry and I said, who have you got that can sit here and answer these questions for us? Because I want to make sure that we get them right. So, Crista Cowan so kindly responded and said that she would love to do an interview with us. So we gathered all those together and she's going to answer those for us in just a moment. Now, if you're not familiar with Crista Cowan, she is known as the Barefoot Genealogist, and she is on YouTube as well at the Ancestry channel, so check her out there. Also, well, we're going to get to those questions here in just a second, but I want to make sure that you know, if this is your first time here, that my name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family research. Genealogy TV has a brand new website. Make sure you check that out at genealogytv.org. Also, for every episode we do, if there's more information to tell you about, that'll be in the show notes below the video. And if there's any links associated with that too, that'll be in the description below. And at genealogytv.org. I'm putting those in the blog posts over there for you so it's a little more convenient. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified each time we upload a video so that you don't miss a thing. All right, I know you want to get to the answers to your questions. We're going to do that right now. Well, welcome, Crista, to Genealogy TV. We are so honored that you are here today with us. You know, we've had a lot of questions from folks about the new products at Ancestry, and I, for one, love them. I am super excited. I have already found some really great tips along the way. So thank you for your time. I know you are a very busy lady, and getting you on has been is a little bit of a challenge, just trying to get everybody's time frame worked out. But thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, wonderful. So before we get started, you are on YouTube on the Ancestry channel. Tell everybody what times you upload, what days.
Well, it depends on my travel schedule.
I know.
So yeah, I do try to record 2 or 3 episodes a month. At the beginning of every month, I try to upload a What's New episode, and then an additional time or two throughout the month, I try to upload a video about some of our new products and features, or some questions that we get in, trying to answer those. Just basic genealogy education for people.
And I do know that you have done a couple episodes about the new Thrulines and some of the match list stuff. And I will put links for that in the show notes here as well, so that people can find those episodes, because there's a couple that I saw. I think you're in the blue room, or the blue background.
Yes, I am in the same room today, just facing a different direction.
Oh, there you go. Okay, well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Anyway, so I'm going to jump into some of the questions. Now, I've done 2 or 3 episodes now on some of the different new tools there at Ancestry, and I've gotten a lot of questions that I think I've probably kind of been able to answer the best I can, but you are the expert, so let's find out from you the answer to some of these common questions that I've been getting, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so Mary Davis wrote, and excuse me while I'm looking off screen a little bit because I want to make sure I get this right. Mary Davis wrote, my DNA results summary page does not include the new Ancestry Discoveries area. I was wondering where this is located. Now, could some people be seeing something different than I am? Because I see it.
So the new Ancestry Discoveries is what we're calling our traits product. And traits are only available for what we call the self-test on an account. So it's the very first person who tested. So if you manage other tests, it won't be available for those other tests. Or if you tested a parent or a grandparent first and then tested yourself, you won't be able to see it on any of the additional tests on an account, only that primary test.
Okay, good. All right. This is about the Personal Discoveries Project or the new Ancestry Discoveries. Bill Miller wrote a couple months ago, so I don't know if something has changed since then, but he wrote, I don't have the Personal Discoveries Project or the new Ancestry Discoveries. I see where you had suggested in another reply, this was me, that I have to enable it under settings. I don't see that anywhere either. Please help.
So again, the traits product is an add-on product, so you do have to purchase it. So what you'll see is you'll see a banner to purchase traits, and I think it's like $20 right now. And then you can add it on to your existing DNA experience, or if you've already purchased it, you'll see it there right across the top as well.
Fabulous. Tree tags, and I love the tree tags, by the way.
Me too.
Yeah, well, and I think everybody's using them a little differently. I've been reading a lot of the comments about how different people are using them. So someone named Naeem Creates, interesting name, he had a lot of great things to say about, but then he wrote, the main issue that we have is with adoption tags. We currently have my adopted great-grandfather's biological parents as the primary parents in our tree. So he is tagged with adopted out of this family. However, sometimes we have adoptive parents as preferred parents, and it seems annoying to have to change his tag to adopted into this family every time we do this.
That is really good feedback.
Yeah, well, and some of this is, I was wondering if maybe he could just create a custom tag that's just adopted. Or...
Yeah, absolutely. So we created, as most people know that have used the MyTreeTags feature, we created a set of what we call universal tags. So they're just fixed tags that anybody can select from. But there is also the ability to create those custom tags, and anybody can do that. And so yeah, if you're using the system in a little bit more of a unique or customized way, then a custom tag is certainly something you want to consider that might fit your circumstances a little better.
Yeah, I think probably just a little bit more of a generic adopted tag kind of.
Yeah. The thing is really, the other thing to remember is that if the person is still living, none of the tags are going to be seen by anyone but you anyway. So really, it's only if the person is deceased, other people will see those tags on a public tree. So you want to make sure that they're reflecting accurate information.
Well, that leads me to the next question. Elaine William wrote, I love the tags. I love the tags. They have been so helpful to me. One thing, though, is that I have not seen to date is I have not seen any tags when viewing other public trees associated with the DNA match. Are the tags public?
Yes, so tags are, if your tree is public, the tree tags are public on any deceased people. Of course, if your tree is private, MyTreeTags are only going to be visible to people who have access to your tree. I think what she might be referencing is just that because it's still a fairly new product and a lot of people are still trying to figure out how to use it or how they want to use it. Some people, like in my case, I've just started propagating in my tree, but my tree is so large it could take me years to get some of those tags assigned to people. So I think the longer it's out and the more people use it, the more frequently we'll start to see them. I've seen them in some other trees as I've come across them. So
fabulous. And by the way, I love your trick with the hearts.
Oh yeah.
Emojis that you're putting on. Yeah, that's very cool. In fact, as long as we're talking about that, how do you do that? Just tell them how you do it.
So on Ancestry, whenever you enter someone's name, I always caution people, don't ever put anything in the name field except the name. No quotation marks and nicknames, no special characters. But the suffix field is kind of a free space. And you can put anything you want in the suffix field, and it's not going to interfere with any of the hinting or searching or any of the automated DNA tools. And so I just found some colored heart emojis. I use a website called emojipedia.com, copy and paste whichever ones I want, and then I just paste them into the suffix field. It gives it a little bit of a visual on my tree for me to keep track of stuff. I'm a super visual person, so.
And I saw you doing that and immediately started doing it right after. I was like, in fact, before you even explained it in one of your episodes, I had spotted it in one of your trees from a few episodes back. You had just like maybe one or two in there. And I thought, aha, there's a way to do this. And some feedback of my own. It would be great if there was a day coming that we could create those colored lines all the way up the tree.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep, give it some thought.
Feedback noted.
Okay. CWDXer writes, and this is regarding Thrulines, by the way. He wants to know, is Thrulines beta over with?
The Thrulines beta is not over with. We anticipate it will still be in beta for another few weeks at least. But it is quickly coming to a close. So just so people understand kind of what that means, Thrulines beta has been available to everyone since we launched it. So it wasn't something you had to opt into, or it just kind of showed up and then you can choose to use it if you want or not. What the beta means for Ancestry is that on the bottom corner, when you're using that experience, there's a feedback link. And our product managers review all of that feedback once a week in a staff meeting so that we can make sure that the beta is getting the proper attention to any fixes that need to be done, any feedback about things people like or don't like, that we're getting the right emphasis on it. Of course, once it comes out of beta, we still will take feedback. It just won't be as quickly iterative as it was during the beta process, because we'll be looking at what's the next big release for that particular product experience.
Wonderful. All right, DNA circles.
Okay.
Here we go. Several questions about whether DNA circles is going away completely. I've shown them where they can find the DNA circles on that Thrulines.
The card.
Card, yes. But some people are not seeing it. I've had several people say they're not seeing, and I actually showed it in one of my videos. See, it's right down here at the bottom. Several people are saying they're not seeing it, so I'm wondering, is it available there for everybody?
Okay, let's talk about DNA circles for just a minute. So first thing to note is that DNA circles never quite made it out of beta. So it's been available for years, but it has been in beta that whole time. And part of that is because it wasn't as inclusive of an experience as we would have liked. So a very small percentage of Ancestry DNA customers ever even had DNA circles because the requirement to be included in a circle were really stringent, and there was some limitations around the technology. So we took all the things that we learned through the process of DNA circles, and that's what we used to create Thrulines to make it a more expansive experience for people. So more people, significantly more people, get Thrulines than ever had circles. They get more Thrulines than if they had circles. They may have only had a few. And so we just took all the learnings from that experience and have poured it into this new innovation to move us forward into the future. So if people aren't seeing DNA circles on their Thrulines card, it's likely because they either never had DNA circles to begin with, or at some point in the recent past, they switched which tree their DNA was attached to, which forces it to recalculate all the circles, and we stopped creating new circles a while ago. So the archived experience is still available there for people who had them, but if you never had them or if you've switched your tree, there are no new circles being created. Now, all that said, ultimately DNA circles are going away entirely. I think we put a banner up on the DNA circles page last week to let people know that. There's a little FAQ link they can click to get all the details about what the retirement plan is for DNA circles. But ultimately, in my opinion, I think Thrulines is a much better experience for everyone. And like I said, we took all the learnings from circles, and I think we've made it even better.
Oh, without a doubt. You know, and I was trying to explain in one of my videos that, you know, if you look at the DNA circles and all the people that are in there, I mean, you can find those same people in the Thrulines, but now they're lined up in the right section of your tree.
Yeah.
Whereas before you had to go figure it out.
Yep.
So absolutely, you know, 2 thumbs up on the Thrulines. I love it. I just have had to explain to several people that you got to keep in mind, this is using other people's trees, and it's only as good as the other people's trees.
Yep. Yeah, and that is the major difference between DNA circles and Thrulines. DNA circles used your tree and the tree of your match, and you both had to have the common ancestor in your tree, and that was great. But again, it created a really limited experience, because how many of us have matches who had trees with the common ancestor in them? This kind of opens up that experience. So my cousin who takes a DNA test only creates a tree with himself and his parents. Well, we can still add him to a through line because his parents are in my tree. And so we're able to kind of stitch that together.
Wonderful. Okay, Simon and Elaine Williams, they wrote, in regard to through lines, I was reading on Facebook. Okay, this is the one this is the one I was telling you about before. That is a little bit of a doozy, and it'll be interesting to see your reaction to this. I'll start over. In regards to through lines, I was reading on Facebook's DNA. There's an Ancestry DNA site. I don't think it's an official site. I think it's an unofficial site, but I'm not sure. How a person detached her DNA from herself in a tree and put it on an ancestor a few generations back, and they were who's a no longer living person. And this person that she attached it to, I guess, was a brick wall and she said, or illegitimacy. She said, what you have to do is go to the DNA settings, go down to the family tree linking. You're already shaking your head now.
I'm already shaking my head. It breaks so many things when people do this.
Oh, I know. But apparently what it did for several people was created a new set of DNA connections that they didn't know about. So I'm just asking for your take. I kind of know what it's going to be, but let's hear it.
Yeah, so we strongly encourage people to attach the DNA test to the person in the tree who took the test. There are ways to work your way around the system, like she has displayed. However, that causes a lot of things on the back end to have issues. And it also means that when your DNA matches are looking at things, stuff won't make sense. It also, and I have seen this happen with people, a lot of adoptees try to use the mirror tree concept, which I am very strongly against for a number of reasons. It causes you very often to get led down the wrong path with some incorrect conclusions, because information doesn't line up the way that it needs to in order for you to analyze that information correctly. And so you're having to make some logical jumps and do some heavy duty math with the centimorgans to make them make sense in the context that you're viewing. So rather than attaching your tree or your DNA to someone else in the tree, what I encourage people to do is, if you have a hypothesis that you want to test out, like let's say you're trying to figure out who great-grandma's biological father was. Mm-hmm. If you have a hypothesis, add that father as a hypothesis, add a MyTreeTag that says he's a hypothesis so that anybody who sees it knows that. But at least then you've got everybody in the right place, so that as the centimorgans, the shared centimorgans with the DNA matches are calculated out, it makes sense in the chart that you're looking at. Because it's all being calculated from you or from the person who took the DNA test, rather than from somebody who is generations removed from you, or maybe not even related to you at all, based on the way I've seen some people use that methodology.
That's a great idea. Yeah, and so kind of to recap what you said, if you change your DNA in your tree to someone else, not only are you breaking it for yourself, but you're breaking it for everybody else.
Right. There you go.
Okay. Through lines question. Yeah, most of the rest of these are through lines questions. I'm working, this is Wyatt Siri who wrote, I'm working in combination, I'm working on combining two of my trees. I have one for my mom and one for my dad, which was working fine until I did a DNA test in August, he says. My question for you is, can you attach one DNA test to two different trees?
The easy answer is no, you cannot. So you can only attach a DNA test to one tree. Now, you can attach as many tests as you want to that one tree. So for example, I've tested, and my parents have tested, and my grandma's tested. Like, we've tested all the people, and they're all attached to that one tree. But the one test can only be attached to the one tree. And part of that has to do just with some back-end processing. For the way that the through lines work, the way that common ancestor hints work, the way that the display of your tree to your DNA matches works, we have to know which tree to display, which tree to look at, which paths to follow to start to create those common ancestor hints and those through lines. And so from just a technology standpoint, that's kind of the way it is. Now, that said, I'm a huge fan of one tree to rule them all. I always want to have a singular view of my own family history. I think our children deserve that as well. So anytime we try to create split trees or multiple trees, it can lead to a lot of confusion for ourselves and for those in our family. So combining a tree, though it is a little bit tedious if you've started otherwise, it's a process that I think is absolutely worth going through.
I know I have some client trees and I have other trees, projects that I was working on that I keep private because I'm working on a total hypothesis. I had one gentleman who did not know who his father was. And so, and he's in my family. I could have done this whole hypothesis stuff in my tree, but my tree's public and I really didn't want to do this.
Yeah.
Privately. I mean, I wanted to create a separate tree privately so that I could really work through, because I was working through a lot of different scenarios because this was a really difficult case. I eventually solved it, but that would have been cool to be able to attach that DNA test to both trees.
Yeah.
If that's ever possible or not. But
yeah. So yeah, technologically, it's not currently possible. But again, kind of hearkening back to the previous question, if it's something that you're comfortable with doing, you can now use MyTreeTags to mark people as hypotheses in trees. If it's a generation or two removed and there's not a lot of personal sensitivities.
Yeah, I was going to say this one was a sensitive subject. Yeah. So, okay. Terry Dean writes quite a lot of good comments here. I have a free membership which doesn't let me get much information through Thrulines, and then some other stuff. And then he said, so basically I'm asking, how much information can a person with a free account see? Now, obviously they paid for the DNA test. So.
Yeah. So when you take a DNA test, what you're paying for is you're paying to have your DNA processed by the lab, you're paying for your ethnicity estimate or your DNA story results, and then you're paying for access to your matches. So you get a full list of your DNA matches as new people match you that come in, they show up on your list. You can use the match list tools, the new colored groupings and the filters and all of that. You can also message your matches. But the family trees on Ancestry are behind the paywall. And so because Common Ancestor Hints and Thrulines both utilize those family trees, that's where you would need to pay a subscription. Now, if you can talk your matches into sharing their trees with you, if someone shares a tree with you, you do not have to have a subscription to view a tree that has been shared with you.
Oh, good point. Good point. Well, this person, I believe, said they were going to test it out for a month or so and see what they could absorb information with.
And there are a lot of Ancestry members who do that. They subscribe for a month or two because they're really active working on it. Then they take a month or 2 or 6 off and come back for a month or 2.
Kate Stout writes about Thrulines. She says, I think there's a lot of value to Thrulines, but I have to run into a lot of potential ancestors who are already in my tree. Some of them have name variations like Lisa Cameron versus Elizabeth C. Cameron, but some, frankly, I don't understand because we match on name, date of birth, marriage, and date of death. Now, I have my suspicions, but what do you think?
Okay, so there's 2 things that we have to be careful about differentiating between. One of them is common ancestors, which is the person at the top of the chart that is the common ancestor between you and a match. And if that person, the way that that Thrulines algorithm works is we follow your tree as far back as we can, and then as far back down as we can when we're following the path between you and a match. So if that common ancestor is there in your tree, it should never show up as a potential. It should always show up as the common ancestor. Now, where I've seen what she's talking about happen is when you're talking about the children of that common ancestor, it's very possible that you could have the name of one of those children entered some way, and then the match has it entered another way. Because, again, we're going to follow their tree as far back as we can. And if the computer can't tell that those are both the same person, then they're going to look like 2 different children of that common ancestor.
Okay, so what? Now, because what you said was almost the same as what I was thinking. I was thinking, what if the two trees have different common ancestors, but they're connecting with a DNA match? For example, somebody has their tree wrong. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
They have the same name, date of birth, marriage, and date of death, but somewhere along the line, when they're both climbing up that tree, they have different common ancestors for whatever reason. Could that also be a scenario?
It could be, yeah, because ultimately what the computer's trying to do is find the path between you and match. And so we'll use your tree and we'll use their tree as far as we can, trying to match common information back to this path. If it can't, it'll pull something from another tree or, you know.
All right, here's another one for Thrulines. Several comments I'm seeing about the Thrulines. I've actually had several people say the same thing. They've gone in there to Thrulines, especially like in the early days, right when it first came up. They would go in there and they go, look at great-grandfather, for example. There's one particular person, they find the Thruline, and then they go back the next day, and all that is missing. It's different.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the first probably month and a half after we launched Thrulines, we were using a particular algorithm, and we got a lot of feedback about the way that that algorithm was working. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board a little bit and rewrote the algorithm that creates the Thrulines. One of the things that was of concern was that people were seeing, for example, a lot of adopted or step parents in the path, because in their trees, they hadn't denoted that that was a non-biological relationship, or they had marked the step parent as the preferred parent, and the computer was just following the preferred path. And so we actually then went out and rewrote that algorithm to remove the step on other non-biological relationships in the path. So what that, then we reran those Thrulines for everybody, and that's been several weeks ago now. And so, yeah, so there was a period of time there where lots of movement in the Thrulines. They've kind of settled now, but there is still the possibility for change. Anytime anybody changes their tree, it has the potential to affect the path, particularly if it is your DNA match who changes their tree or switches their DNA from one tree to another. It has the potential to change that path.
And that the last scenario is exactly what I had suggested was, hey, everybody's jumping in there and they could be going, oh, I found a mistake based on the Thrulines. I got to change my tree. So if they change it, it's going to show up in your, yep. Okay. So question for you. We've run through most of the questions that the viewers on Genealogy TV were asking, at least the common ones. Have you seen anything common that I didn't ask that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so one of the things that is causing a little bit of confusion in the community that I always want to make really clear is that on Ancestry, your tree is your tree, and nobody can change it or edit it or add anything to it unless you've expressly invited them to do so and given them the access to do that. So when you're viewing Thrulines, some people are looking at that and they're saying, Ancestry's changing my tree, or somebody has changed my tree. No, the Thrulines are just possible paths that are being suggested that connect you to your DNA matches and all of a group of DNA matches to that common ancestor. Nothing is being added from there into your tree. So your tree is still your tree. If you want to copy some of that information over, you can do that once you've verified it, hopefully, but nothing is altering your tree as it stands.
Also, maybe you can make a comment just as a reminder, because I've been talking about this. I know you've been talking about this. The dashed line versus the solid line in the Thrulines. Yeah,
so in Thrulines, anything that is in a white box with a solid line around it is information that came from your tree to create that visual of that path. If you clicked on that box, it would take you to your tree, to that person in your tree. Anything that's in a kind of transparent box with a dotted line around it came from someone else's tree. Now we're going to try to use the tree of your DNA match as far as we're able. And if you click on that dotted box, it will take you to their tree. But if it came from another tree on Ancestry, so if we haven't been able to fill out the path with your tree and your match's tree, we'll go out and search the other 100 million trees on Ancestry. will tell you the username of the person who owns the tree that came from. And again, you click on the box, it will open up that tree so that you can review whatever evidence they have about that person and their identity and their relationships. So I strongly encourage people, whenever you see a dotted line box in your Thrulines, click on it and go explore the sources that are attached, the other information that is in that tree, because that's going to help you to analyze or evaluate the validity of that information way more than just looking at just the Thrulines chart.
So I like to look at the Thrulines. Okay, so visualize this with me for a moment.
Okay.
The solid boxes are your tree.
Yep.
That is the cake. The dashed line above it is the icing on the cake.
There you go.
The icing, right?
It's a fun analogy.
It really is, because it's like candy, you know. Go check out the sweet stuff that you haven't explored yet. So
yeah, absolutely. A couple of other things about Thrulines that I think a lot of people aren't aware of or haven't fully explored yet. One has to do with the amount of shared DNA. So at the bottom of those Thrulines charts, you've got the people in the circles. Those are your actual DNA matches. And right there on the Thrulines chart, we list the amount of shared DNA. What we're discovering is that not a lot of people know that if they click on that amount of shared DNA, however, 20 centimorgans or 300 centimorgans, it pops up a chart. That is a dynamic chart based on the amount of shared DNA between you and that match that tells you what all the possible genetic relationships are and the probability that your relationship to that person is in fact what we have charted out. So it's a really good way to gut check that where you have been placed in the chart versus where they've been placed in the chart in connection to that common ancestor is where they really belong. And so I use that chart a lot. The second thing that a lot of people aren't quite familiar with has to do with private trees. So on Ancestry, you can have a public tree or a private tree. If your tree is private, you have two options, which is you can make it searchable or unsearchable. If your tree is searchable, what that means is I go search for your great-grandfather, it will tell me this person with this name and birth date exists in this tree, but if you want to see anything else, you need to ask for permission from the tree owner. Well, we just took that same functionality from trees and have put it into Thrulines, which means you're going to see a path now that may include a little dotted line box that says private, meaning that information is coming out of a private tree. If you click on that box, it will tell you this person with this name and this birth date exists in this tree. But if you want to see more information about them, you're going to have to ask permission. So one of the things we're seeing is that people aren't clicking on those private boxes. Sometimes you click on a private box and it actually just shows you this person is still living. We're not going to show you any information about them. But do a little clicking around and exploring. And sometimes there's more information available there than people realize.
all right, let's talk about that with regards to unlinked trees.
Okay.
Unlinked DNA. Like they have a tree, but that's not linked necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Does that show up in Thrulines? No.
No. So your tree, you have to have your DNA linked to a tree in order to show up in Thrulines. So if your tree is unlinked, you will not be able to participate in the Thrulines experience at all. So you won't get any Thrulines, nor will you show up in anyone else's Thrulines.
Okay, well, along that same topic, is the DNA match list going away, or is that going to stick around?
The DNA match list is here to stay. In fact, we just did a whole overhaul of it. We have a whole new and improved match list experience. It is also still in beta for a few more weeks. You can, when you're viewing your match list, there's a little beta toggle on and off switch in the top right-hand corner. I love it. I turned it on and never turned back.
Well, and that might be one of those areas where a person can find a DNA match that it has an unlinked tree or no tree at all, but they're a DNA match. So word of advice, don't forget to check the DNA match list and not rely entirely on the Thrulines, because there may be stuff in that match list that's not showing up in the Thrulines. Yeah?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in some cases, closer relationships than you might even realize.
Yes. Maybe even a few surprises. You never know. All right. Before I get into my last couple, do you have anything else you want to share?
Not about Thrulines. I think I spend a few hours every week with my dad on the phone going over our matches, and we spend a lot of time in our match list. We spend a lot of time in Thrulines. So those two experiences, like you said, don't ignore one over the other. They work really beautifully together. And then, of course, the new colored dots, which being able to group people into multiple groups is kind of fun as well as really a useful tool.
Absolutely. And for the folks at home, make sure you check out that episode that Crista did on Ancestry YouTube channel, where she's talking about the colored dots and how you used your 8 grandparents, I think.
8 great-grandparents, yeah.
To colorize. Great idea. Great tip. So what's next for Ancestry? Anything new coming down any more toys that we can expect coming down the pipe?
Always, yeah.
Anything we can talk about, or?
Yeah, probably nothing that I can announce right now, but we are constantly innovating. The teams that worked on MyTreeTags and product and the new DNA match list, I'm already working on the next iteration of things and broadening some of those tools. And so we are looking at all the feedback that we're getting. So please keep it coming. We do take really serious note of that and want to develop tools that are going to be useful for people as they go on these journeys of discovery into themselves and their family history.
Well, I hope that when you are ready to announce it, that you will come back on Genealogy TV and tell us all about it.
I would love to.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It was fun to be here.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Crista, for clearing that up for us. What a valuable tool that we have now with the new Thrulines on Ancestry. Super awesome. Just be cautious. It's using other people's trees, so we need to make sure that we are evaluating it just like any other piece of evidence. We need to evaluate it for its accuracy for our own tree, because we want our own tree to be as accurate as possible for future generations. All right, I hope that was helpful. Make sure that if you like that, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. Make sure you share it. Share it around the social media if you found that helpful. Also, don't forget that Genealogy TV has a newsletter. Links for everything are in the show notes below and at the blog at genealogytv.org, so make sure you check that out. All right, until next time, keep on climbing your family tree.